Please enjoy this ad-free episode as part of our Academic Integrity series sponsored by Pangram Labs, the world's leading AI detection tool. Try it out at pangram.com. That's PANGRAM.com.
Welcome back, everybody. It's your time to EdUp on the EdUp Experience podcast, where we make education your business. This is Elvin Freitas, co-founder of the EdUp Experience. We are back on another awesome episode of our Academic Integrity series, sponsored by Pangram Labs. And with me, I have always on my side the co-host who is the most. He is Bradley Emmy. He's CTO and co-founder at Pangram Labs. Bradley, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Alvin.
Fantastic. Let's get into it. You ready? Our guest today, he is Dr. Adam Garland, and he's the Dean of Student Affairs at Ensign College. Adam, how you doing today?
So good. Great to be with you, Elvin. Bradley, you too. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for being here. Always appreciate your time. So let's get into it. Adam, tell us, what do you do and how do you do it?
Thanks so much. So my role here at Ensign College, as you mentioned, is the Dean of Student Affairs, and I work with a variety of different offices on our campus. Obviously, we're talking about the Student Conduct Office today, so I'll have an opportunity to speak more of that later, but within the portfolio is also our counseling office, our disability services office, student experience and student leadership, our mentoring program. There's a variety of offices, tutoring. It's great to be able to have touch points with offices across the campus. And really, at the end of the day, we're trying to change students' lives through education. And so it's an honor to be a part of this podcast and be able to connect with you guys.
Yeah, awesome. Could you tell us a little more about Ensign College too?
Yeah, Ensign College is a four-year institution based out of Salt Lake City. It offers certificates, associate degrees, and bachelor's degrees. We have about 2,000 students on campus, and then a multiple of that, somewhere around 6,000 to 8,000, I think, online through a collaborative partnership we have with BYU Pathway Worldwide. We really focus on helping students develop career-ready skills so that whenever they hit the ground after their experience here at the college, they're ready to step right into a meaningful employment opportunity. Some of the things that I think are really unique about the college is a unique model that we have where the majority of our instructors are professionals who work out in the field. So most of our instructors are adjunct faculty who have the day-to-day experiences of working in their employment field, and then come to the college and teach students not only the curriculum, but how it's done, how the sausage is made in the offices that they work at. So we think it's a really cool experience for students to not only learn what's happening out in the field, but also be able to develop the applied skills of, hey, this is what real professionals are doing with it. And then they have that network of partnerships whenever they graduate to be able to step right into the workforce.
Oh, nice. So I could come teach.
You got it, man. Come on. Apply now.
That's awesome. That's all. Thanks for that, Adam. So we're asking everyone the same question in this series. So there are two we're asking. The first one we're going to ask you is, how do you define academic integrity?
I love that question. And I think we're seeing an evolving way in which academic integrity is being defined across the country. And obviously, one of the things that I think is driving some of that change is the recent innovations with generative AI. On a personal level and at a professional level here at the college, we see integrity and character development as an integral part to a student's journey here at the college. And so when I speak about how I define academic integrity, I can't speak to it without thinking about character development and personal development for our students. And so with academic integrity, we're really looking at, are you being honest in the way that you engage in your academics? We had a member of our board come speak to our institution several years ago, and he talked about that personal development that comes as part of the experience here at Ensign College. And what he said is that students who graduate from this institution must have an inner moral compass that's ever more valued and ever more rare. And so we see that critical connection of academic integrity with personal moral development. And so that development of character is key to how we define academic integrity. So as an institution, we have an academic honesty policy. We talk about what it means to give proper citation to sources, what it means to show that you can own your own work, that you've provided this work. But really, at the end of the day, it's complex in doing that. And we're seeing that it can be discipline specific in the way that that professionals use generative AI and other tools within their field. And so there's got to be space to be able to say, hey, what is upholding standards within each area of the college and within each discipline?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, are you guys affiliated with the Church of LDS?
Yeah, I love that question. Thank you. We are sponsored by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And so there's a group of what we call CES institutions that we are a part of. So we have sister organizations with BYU, BYU Idaho, BYU Hawaii, and BYU Pathway.
Oh, that's super cool. And so, yeah, I mean, there's a like obvious connection there with, like the teachings of the church and like academic integrity principles. Like, I guess like what specifically like in the church's teachings, like do you see as kind of like the like relating the most to academic integrity?
Yeah, I love that. So there's two pieces I kind of want to hit on. First and foremost is our mission. So the mission statement of Ensign College is to develop capable and trusted disciples of Jesus Christ. And we really hone in on that phrase, to be trusted. And academic integrity is so closely tied to, can someone trust you? When you give someone your word, will you follow through on that action? When you're asked to produce a product, are you going to do it in a way that's ethical and responsible? And so we look at the trusted side of that, but then our CES honor code also has a specific statement within it that that all students will be honest. And so there's that tie-in on both sides of our mission statement, but also the student code of conduct, which we call the CES honor code, that ties right into that.
Yeah, definitely. Very interesting because like, I mean, I think like honesty is a really, really interesting word here because like, I do think that like in academic integrity, like, this is a discipline that we teach students, right? And so like, I think like students can be, simultaneously like very honest, but also like maybe not upholding academic integrity at the same time. Like, we hear so many things from students about like, oh, like I just didn't know, or like, I cheated because like I was just running out of time or whatever like that. And so like, I think like in general, like when you confront a student about like an academic integrity violation, like largely they are pretty honest, but it is still like kind of a teaching moment, right? And so, yeah, like, I mean, how do you kind of address that with students, and like kind of how do you like kind of create these like teaching moments with academic integrity?
I love the question that you asked, particularly because you're tying this to the idea that sometimes our behavior doesn't match up with what we believe or what we think we should do. And so when you think about a student judicial or a student conduct process, you really have to understand. And in fact, when you look at the traditions of the student judicial code or the student conduct code, from the very beginning, it focuses on that personal development, that character development, and the idea of we're not just educating for a career, but we're educating for citizenship. So I love that theme of there's more to it than just the education side of preparing for a career. So coming back to your question, when you're sitting down with a student, you've got to understand that this is an educational process, that this isn't just a conduct or a judicial process, but we're trying to foster development with students. And so that paradigm shift of being able to say, hey, this is a process for us to help you grow and develop through this experience, I think really changes the framework for a student, because when they come in and they sit in your office and you show, hey, this is the evidence that's been provided, and it's usually pretty clear evidence, there's this moment of fear for them, but then you can change that. You can shift the conversation to say, hey, listen, this is what happened. Let's talk about the factors that caused this. And then also let's look at how do we prevent this from happening again. And you mentioned it, Bradley. You said, hey, I ran out of time, or I was really stressed, or I had all of these things going on, and it gives you an opportunity to intervene in a different way with a student to say, how do we try and put some rails around these other areas to put you in the best position to make a decision that's consistent with who you are and the knowledge that you have.
Yeah, definitely. And then how often are you able to like actually get that kind of like buy-in from the student? Like when they're actually like, okay, like I know I messed up and like, let me try and make it right, versus them like digging their heels in and being like, no, I didn't cheat. Like kind of even in the face of the evidence.
I'll say that at our institution, it's pretty rare to get what you just described in the latter. Most students are willing to be pretty open about it. And honestly, a lot of the time with Chat GPT or Claude or these other sources that are out there, there can sometimes be some gray area on what's okay and what's not okay. I mean, when you think about some of the support tools that we provide students, if you remember when spell check came out and it's checking your spell check or your grammar, like, is that cheating to have that resource there? Today, we have tools that you can type something up in a Microsoft Word document and it gives you suggestions on make this more brief, make
The
this
Google
more
Magic
formal.
Wand. I love it.
And so you just click a button and it does it. And so there's a responsibility, I think, on an institution to be able to provide that educational process for students. So instead of the more defiant, like, I'm not going to, I didn't cheat, you kind of go down a different route with students to talk about, hey, let's talk a little bit about within the framework that you're working, what's okay and what's not okay. And usually that takes buy-in from instructors and faculty. And
yeah.
If I may,
love to kind of explore that more too, like kind of like how do you provide that guidance to instructors and faculty, and like what do you teach them in terms of like how to kind of draw that line with their students?
I love that question. There's what I'll say is I think it starts at the very top. So I think it was it 2022 when Chat GPT released, and
Yep.
there was all of the energy and the excitement and maybe a touch of hysteria around what this is going to mean for institutions. And I was really grateful for what our institution's president, President Bruce Cush, did as soon as that released or shortly thereafter, invited a group to get together and say, what does this mean for our academic honesty policy and how we work with students? And the guidance that we received and the direction from him was, this is a technology that's going to shape the future. And so with that technology, how do we help prepare our students for the future that's going to include tools like ChatGPT or these other generative AI tools? And so our stance from the very beginning was a very proactive stance towards it. In fact, we wrote into our policy that these tools are really powerful to help students with a variety of tasks that are quite appropriate in an academic setting and in employment settings. But we've got to get better at being able to define how do you set those parameters around what's not okay in the classroom when we're opening up a really broad area of saying we support and we want our students using and learning these tools. So that, I think, at the very beginning, that institutional buy-in from the very top was really critical for us in beginning that process of going back to faculty and saying, hey, how can we incorporate this within your programs? Because you're going to see something different in a computer science or coding classroom than what you're going to see in maybe an introductory English 101 course.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like, there's like two reactions to like ChatGPT. There's like one that's just like, oh, this changes nothing. Like, academic integrity is unchanged. And then there's like, oh, this changes everything. Like, this is the future. And I mean, I think like, like many things, like the truth kind of lies somewhere in the middle there.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, I mean, I think like, probably like I think like the values and the principles of academic integrity are largely the same, right? Like, honesty, trust, like these are things that like, were here and important like before and after ChatGPT, of course.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think from an implementation standpoint, like a lot has changed in terms of just like, what do instructors have to do in order to make sure that like their assignments are still, one, like certifying that students are still learning, but two, also that their assessments are still even relevant, because like, AI is like, changing the way that people work. It's changing the skills that employers demand from their students. And so like, like how has the adoption in general just kind of been, like how has the faculty response been in general to generative AI?
Yeah, I would say, like many institutions, it's mixed, right? You have some that have more of the concerns about what is this going to mean within our discipline versus others that are, this is the future and we need to go all in on how do we leverage these tools within our curriculum. So what the guidance has been within our institution has been focusing on how do you look at assessments and outcomes to be able to determine that it's not just a product-based outcome, because ChatGPT can do that very quickly. It can create a product, but you want to see what are the assessments that we have in those intermediate steps to help students facilitate the learning process for students, and measuring outcomes at each of those steps instead.
Yeah, definitely. Although, like, it does worry me. Like, I mean, I'm all for like process and product. Like, I mean, I think like that's all great. But like now we're like getting to the point too where like ChatGPT can also like fake the steps of the process too, right?
Yeah.
Like, if like, you ask your student like for the brainstorm, then like the ChatGPT can just pop out the brainstorm. And like, I think the other thing like that I found like really disturbing is like I heard this anecdote from a writing instructor that I'm close friends with, and he was saying like the most disturbing use of ChatGPT that he's seen a student do is a student popped like a reading from the class into ChatGPT and then asked the AI, "How am I supposed to feel about this?" And I was just like, "Oh my God, that's horrifying."
Yeah, totally.
um, and so like yeah, like I mean, do you think that like just like process is enough, or do you think that like like kind of like how do you kind of see just like this changing too as like AI just becomes more capable?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe is the most honest answer. I don't know what that'll look like. And I imagine the answer I give today will probably look different in 6 months or a year or 2 years. But what I think we'll see is I think we'll see faculty leveraging these tools more intentionally within their courses so that the process is utilizing that tool to not say, hey, don't use this, but instead use this tool in the class. And what do you think about how this is being used? And so that's going to be, I believe that's going to become a more integral part of coursework. And in fact, we see that already in some of our programs here at the college.
Yeah, I think like one technique that I just love is like when like I've heard a lot of this lately, like the instructor is just like, "Hey, like I want you to use ChatGPT for this assignment, but you just also have to turn in all your conversations with ChatGPT
Yeah.
to me at the end." Um because then you can see like kind of like how exactly like in a very specific way like how AI was used, and like did the student kind of overstep here and like rely on it to outsource fundamental skills versus kind of incidental skills. Did the student just ask the AI, how am I supposed to feel about this, or did they engage in genuine reflection, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so like maybe yeah, I mean I know also like a bunch of companies are like building like authorship and like Turnitin Clarity and like things like this that are kind of are trying to bring AI into the process, and treat AI as like a first class citizen within the process rather than just like pretending it doesn't exist.
Yeah,
So
that side of things won't work very long. It's already here and already embedded in what students do day to day. I mean, you think about what we do in our work day to day, and AI is an integral part of what we're doing every day, and that's the way it'll be for students going forward.
yeah, definitely. Curious to also ask you about kind of the online portion, because I mean, I think with online classes in general, it's like, I mean, it's not impossible, but it's just a little bit more difficult for like instructors to build those personal relationships with students and like try and understand like what they're capable of and like, just like be able to give them like really like high quality feedback too. So like kind of what are some of the academic integrity challenges that you guys face in online education, and like how have you kind of worked to address them?
Yeah, I think that's really well said that it is more difficult to create those one-to-one connections as opposed to a professor who
Not
has them
impossible, but
in the
yeah, just more
class
difficult.
with them.
Yeah.
But I do think that those after hours, those office hours where faculty can meet with students one-on-one, I think the ability to ask them to show work is a really powerful way to be able to say, how are you? How are you? I know you're using this technology. Tell me how you're using this technology, and get them to be more explicit with what they're doing with it are some really cool tools to be able to use it, to be able to
Yeah, for
identify
sure.
it.
Uh-huh. Like how do you kind of like get instructors to kind of like encourage, students to actually come to office hours and like kind of develop those relationships online?
I think like all institutions, I think that is an ongoing challenge is to say, hey, what do we do to foster that kind of relationship with students? And in part it's the outreach. It's the regular outreach. It's the messaging. We leverage an LMS that lets us do this communication on every assignment where professors and students can have that interaction. I don't know that I'm saying it's a miracle that it totally works perfectly, but I think regularly providing that feedback and inviting that connection to students is one way that we found to foster it.
Definitely. And do you see that like, there's a in terms of like outcomes of online students, do you find that like it's, fairly effective and like, the online students are doing as well as the in-person students?
That's my sense. I'd probably defer to some colleagues that have more expertise in that specific area, but that's my sense of things.
Yeah, very curious because I feel like online education is like really having a moment now. Like with, I think like so many schools are realizing like they can just expand their reach, and just expand their impact by offering like these online classes. And even like kind of like hybrid models where like it's like, oh, like, I have a family emergency, like I need to travel like, hundreds of miles away to like, take care of some personal stuff, but like I can still go to class online, and not fall like weeks behind. I feel like there's so many like positive aspects of online education, but yeah, just the academic integrity piece is just like a lot harder to uphold, I think. Just because like, there isn't as much there. Well, one, there's just more vectors for students to cheat,
Sure.
obviously. But I mean, second of all, like I think like it's just like harder for the instructor to have process visibility, like you were mentioning, is so important.
Yeah, and I think that's where I'd go back to saying you've really got to build those assessments and outcomes in a way that help you be able to evaluate that in an accurate way. In an accurate way. But yeah,
Right.
to your point about what virtual virtual education has done for us, there were many things that came out of the pandemic, but this accessibility, I think, is one that's been a huge win for institutions.
Oh, did you just start this during the pandemic, the online stuff?
It's been around before that, but I think it's exploded since for all institutions of higher education following the pandemic.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Um, yeah, so I mean, kind of curious. So you said your office like does all sorts of things. Like you do academic integrity, you do like student conduct, like you do like, the whole gambit of things, right? So like, yeah, like I guess like how do you see kind of all of these different functions like kind of like coming together, and like how do they relate to each other?
Yeah, I love that question with a specific focus on the integrated nature of what we want to do at an institution like ours. We have a belief that every single one of our students has the ability to succeed if we provide the right kind of supports to them. And, there's so much in education about just-in-time messaging, early alerts, risks, trying to get to students who may be struggling or at risk to drop out. And so within the offices that I oversee and within the broader student success division, there's really an opportunity for us to work more intentionally together to identify students who need help. And so we're actually right now in the process of building out success teams for every student on campus that has a dedicated success team that goes from a success advisor, academic advisor, to a success coach, to a career mentor, peer mentor, that has this team that's designed, this is your team that can help you be successful. And we're tracking milestones to be able to identify how you're doing in that progression towards earning your certificate, earning your associate's degree, earning your bachelor's. And so that we're trying to bring all that system into a single team so that we can get the support to students just in time.
Oh, that's super cool. So what does that look like from the student's perspective?
We're continuing to build it out. We're getting ready to launch it, actually. And
Wow.
there's elements
Brand new,
of that.
cutting edge stuff. Awesome.
That is where we're at. And so from a student, I think what that really looks like is, hey, a coordinated outreach from an academic advisor, a coordinated outreach from a peer mentor, so that we're not flooding channels with students, but we're really coordinating how do we get the information that we need to students at the right time. For a student, it's logging into a portal and being able to say, hey, this is my team. This is who's in my corner. I meet them at new student orientation. I see their faces. I know who I can go to. And then we support them along that path all the way through their internship, to graduation, and then hopefully out into the workforce to get really meaningful employment.
Oh, that's an awesome program. Like, I mean, I think like in so many schools, there's like this like just barrier between like the non-academic side and like the academic side. But of course, like the two are like interconnected, right? Like, if you're having like, a non-academic personal problem or like mental health stuff or like, like any like, personal like non-academic related crisis that's happening in your life, like of course that's going to affect your academic performance, right? And so like bringing those two together just makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, and whenever a student is struggling, we see a grade dropping or an assignment not turned in, this usually isn't a core academic problem. Usually it's one of these ancillary areas that if we can get support from a counseling team, or if we can get support from a peer mentor, or if we can get support from a success coach that can help with time management or other issues, I think there's a lot of power in this model that we're trying to develop here.
Oh, absolutely. Actually, like when I was at Stanford, like even like, this was like 10 years ago, like there was like an absolute like mental health crisis. Like, like people were just like absolutely like, dropping classes, like, having academic problems, and like, like the mental health office and like the therapists like that they had on campus were just absolutely flooded, like way under capacity. Um, and so like I'm happy to see that like, actually like people are really taking this stuff seriously. And like actually kind of realizing that like, okay, there's not such like a barrier between non-academic and academic. Like, like we have to be focusing on like the whole student, right? Because that creates the whole picture and creates like the actual data that we can, draw from and like, take action on.
Yeah, well said.
Yeah, so that's super cool.
Yeah, sorry, can I jump in real quick? So, Adam, earlier you mentioned you bring evidence to the students. So one of the things that we've been doing this series, we've been learning a lot about what is the evidence packet looks like. What talk to us about that when you talk to a student or the faculty talk to them and say, hey, listen.
Yeah, maybe like specifically with ChatGPT too, because like I mean I think like these generative AI cases are like often the evidence is like kind of like a little bit like murky, like in the sense of like it's hard to prove definitively. It's like kind of just like a collection of weak evidence more so than like a single piece of strong evidence.
Yeah, totally. And you're absolutely right that you can try using these AI catchers that have been developed over time, and there was lots of excitement about, hey, we can finally catch them early on, and then we just
that's our thing.
iterates again and it doesn't work. And so in fact, at our institution, we don't like we give faculty discretion that they can use that, but that can't be the evidence that's used to make a determination to say, yes, a student used generative AI or not. And so it can be a part of a picture to say, hey, this product that you provided doesn't match all of the other communications that we've had with you. It seems like there's a much more developed language skill or thought process that's reasoned through this document than what we've seen in other places. And so how did this come about? And so usually it's providing to and we're very open with students about, hey, this is what we see. This is the concern that we have. What do you make of this? And many times students will be forthcoming and say, hey, yes, I used Chat, or I used Claude, or I used whatever to be able to improve this, or I used Grammarly, or whatever the case is. And we start that conversation with them of, well, how did you use this? And then I defer to a faculty member to say, hey, within this case, is this appropriate? But they're usually the one raising the flag on it. And we use that moment as a teaching moment for a student to say, hey, if you were using ChatGPT in this case, this isn't an appropriate use of this within this context. But let's talk about some other ways that you could have used it that would have been a powerful way to help support you in your journey of completing this assignment. So really, we're just forthcoming. We just share exactly what we have and we talk through it with them.
Yeah, and I think bringing in the previous context is really important too, because like often like it's very like night and day, like in terms of like, okay, like this is what like your own writing looks like, and this doesn't look like that. Also affect, I mean, I've like written a lot of content on like creating evidence for these sorts of things. And like, I think the other thing that seems really compelling is like, okay, like we encourage instructors to just pop the assignment into ChatGPT and see what it spits out. Because if a student turns in something that looks almost the same as that, then that's
like also, a sign.
Yeah. It's typically like, pretty black and white. Like these AIs are not yet really good at producing diverse outputs. So like, I think like in general, like, when instructors like use ChatGPT themselves and like, understand what a ChatGPT response to their assignment looks like, then like their internal detector gets better.
You can usually identify it pretty well. And frankly, with these kind of cases, the standard of evidence is, I don't want to say it's low, but it's a preponderance of the evidence standard, which just means, is it more likely than not that this occurred? And so you have an ability to make that determination for a student, but you always have to tie that to the educational side of, listen, these are ways that are appropriate. This is how we can move forward.
Right. We had Christian Moriarty on the podcast before, who's like a ethicist and a lawyer. And I was asking, I was like, isn't preponderance of the evidence like kind of a low standard for these cases? Like, don't you want to be more sure? And he's like, oh no. He's like, he actually said, like, you sweet summer child, it's actually kind of high. We really don't want to be accusing people of this when they haven't.
Right, totally.
Yeah. So I mean, I think like preponderance of the evidence, like it makes sense from a legal standpoint, but I think when it comes to like actually enforcing like these policies, like we want to be like really, really sure in general. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things that I want to jump in on is I've asked this to other guests before, but I'm just so curious, Adam, because if I'm a student, right, and then I have my friend Bradley, we're both taking English 101, but Bradley has the faculty member that says, go all in on AI, all good. But I have the faculty member that says, you can't use AI at all. That's not fair, Adam. Like,
Yeah.
Are you hearing that? Well, I'm just curious.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah, great question. We're a little bit insulated from that at Ensign College, and it's in part because of our model that I mentioned earlier of being able to leverage these experts who are working in the field as adjunct faculty to come in and teach. And so that policy or that decision is set at our program chair level. So our program chair makes the determination on what's acceptable within our sets of courses, and then it's enforced down at the faculty level. So yeah, I can, for a student, I can totally see that being pretty disconcerting to have one section of a course with a certain set of rules that's different from another. And I think we bypass that a little bit because of our model.
Yeah.
And I think it's a win.
Yeah, and you're very lucky because sometimes it even comes down to assignment too. It's like by assignment, which if you're in the one course and you're saying, well, why is this assignment okay to write AI with, and why this other one is not okay? So is that happening as well? And Ensign faculty are basically saying, okay, this assignment you can, and is there a percentage like you can use? We've heard this too. You can use 20% of AI in this assignment, which I'm like, how do you do that? But
yeah,
anyway.
that's a ridiculous way.
I'm not aware of any percentage number that's been provided for that, but we do. It can be even within a course that there are certain things that it's a, hey, we really want you to leverage AI on this, but on another assignment we don't. But my feel is that we've rewritten most of our curriculum in the last year as we've made a shift to have all of our courses offered in a 7-week block format. And so with that rewriting, there's been a lens for most of them. They're not all done, but most of them have been done with that lens of how do we look at each assignment within the lens of generative AI and what guidance can be provided with that. So our program chairs with the guidance of our instructional design team, and then a program advisory board that helps out and helping us shape what we're doing within programs, helps us kind of understand what the right balance is with that.
Yeah, and then it's also on the syllabi, right? You're being very transparent with the students, so faculty put on the syllabi. Is it talked about during orientation? Are you at the point where you talk about it during recruitment process? How early are you talking to the students about an academic integrity?
Yeah, I don't know, Elvin, that we have it so far out as that it's in the admissions process, but certainly within like our online new student orientation modules at new student orientation, we have these conversations. I mean, we do a presentation at new student orientation. We often talk about Chat GPT within it and leverage things from chat for that presentation because we want to be proactive in helping students see that this is a tool that is really going to help you in your education, but equally important in your future career.
Yeah. I think also like we need students to understand that like just because AI is allowed in a particular assignment doesn't mean that it's going to be like less work or like easier necessarily. Like learning is kind of is hard. It should be hard, like kind of no matter like whether or not you're using AI, right? Because like to learn the learning objectives of the course, like you actually need to be putting in like, real like focused effort on, actually like learning something new. Otherwise, like, if the whole class was just able to be done by AI, like there wouldn't be any skills to be taught. So, I think like, like I think students also kind of need to understand, like, jointly with the faculty, like, hey, like, here is what I'm hoping to like learn from this course and like get out of it, and understand that like if they're going to use AI to just do all of the assignments for them, that like that doesn't serve them well in terms of the learning objectives.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, all right, this has been an awesome conversation. Bradley, any more questions on your side?
No, all good.
Okay, awesome. So, Adam, thanks for the time. Really appreciate it. Always appreciate the insights. So, we want to ask, and we're asking everyone the same question, which is really interesting. We get really a wide range of responses. So, we want to ask you, Adam, what do you see as the future of academic integrity?
Oh, I love that. I think the future is bright for academic integrity. We talked about it earlier on in this podcast that the underlying principles of academic integrity are honesty, of being able to show that you can do your own work, and that's always been the case. It'll always be the case. So I'm not concerned about academic integrity in the future. I think the future is bright for it. I think the way that we leverage some of these new and upcoming tools, we don't know what's around the corner in a year or 3 years or 5 years, but I see the future being bright with academic integrity and our ability to leverage some of these new tools to help facilitate learning and education. It's going to be powerful. From having AI tutors, we see those today, AI tutoring students and leveraging them to be an adjunct to what's happening in the classroom, I think is going to be really powerful. And so from an integrity standpoint, I'm not concerned. I think that we're going to find ways to leverage these tools in ways that are really helpful for students and for faculty for that matter.
Yeah. Good point. Yeah. It's funny because I think you're the second guest in a row who said the future is bright for academic integrity. So we just had someone I talked about as well. Okay, that's great. So thank you so much for your time, Adam. This has been fantastic. Let me outro my co-host, who is the most. He is Bradley Amy, CTO and co-founder at Pangram Labs. Thank you as always, Bradley.
Always great to be here, Alvin. Thanks so much.
You got it. And then, ladies and gentlemen, your guest today, he is Dr. Adam Garland. He's the Dean of Student Affairs at Ensign College. Thank you so much for being with us, Adam.
My pleasure. Thanks, gentlemen.
You got it. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, you've just EdUp'd.
Thank you for listening. This episode is part of our Academic Integrity series sponsored by Pangram Labs, the world's leading AI detection technology. Try it out at pangram.com. That's PANGRAM.com.